servants and students to remain at home amid growing unrest as demonstrations intensify over alleged electoral irregularities. Protesters who took to the streets during voting accused authorities of shutting out the opposition from the electoral process. Security forces have been deployed to maintain order, with heavy patrols reported in major urban centers. A dawn to dusk curfew, which took effect at 6 a.m., remains in force as authorities move to contain the situation. Despite the tension, vote counting is still underway and the nation is awaiting official results. All right, moving on to matters. Healthcare clinical officers yesterday in Marsabit County entered its 28th day of the strike as they continue to demand the implementation of a return to work agreement signed with the county government on February 14th of 2025. The health workers accused the county administration of failing to honor key commitments, including provision of comprehensive medical cover, staff promotions, and remittance of statutory reductions or deductions dating back several financial years. They say little progress has been made despite numerous engagements, adding that the prolonged stalemate has disrupted healthcare services across the country. Now, the striking officers are now calling on Governor to intervene urgently and ensure that an amicable solution is reached to restore normalcy in the public health facilities.
Today we are doing 28th day of our strike as the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, still demanding from the county government of Marsabit to implement our return to work agreement that we signed on 14th of April 2025. We are still demanding the provision of comprehensive medical cover, still demanding our promotions and redesignations, still demanding the remittance of our statutory deductions that goes back several financial years back. And to date, there is minimal or lack of effort from the county government trying to resolve the issues affecting the healthcare workers and especially the clinical officers. And we have decided to go on the street to demand for our rights, to demand the implementation of our return to work agreement in full. And we also request His Excellency the Governor to intervene and make an amicable resolution to the ongoing strike so that we go back to our workplaces and serve our community. Because at the end of the day, it's the community that are suffering. And that is our request. And we are also requesting the County Assembly to intervene in a petition that we served to the County Assembly through the Clerk of Assembly to hear and listen to our grievances. Since we started demanding, it's been over 2 years now that we have been demanding for implementation of our return to work agreement, which always ends in lies and falsehood. And we cannot run a government by lies and threats that are coming from the Department of Health especially. So our demand is, in clear terms, is the county government of Marsabit implement the return to work agreement between the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers and the county government of Marsabit. Thank you.
Mine is to urge executive to implement our true return to work agreement. Also to provide us with a comprehensive medical cover. We have 2 of our colleagues who are sick, one with a tumor and another one with tuberculosis, and they don't have comprehensive medical cover to cater for their medical bill. We need also the government to solve the issue of perennial salary delay. We don't have money to pay.
Now, the Employment and Labor Relations Court has ruled that National Police Service Commission, that is NPSC, lacks the authority to recruit, promote, or dismiss police officers, declaring such functions the sole mandate of the National Police Service. In a landmark judgment delivered by Justice Helen Wasilwa, the court nullified a police recruitment advertisement issued by NPSC chairperson Peter Ilei, citing lack of legal basis. Justice Wasilwa stated that under the Constitution, only the National Police Service is empowered to hire, train, deploy, discipline, and dismiss police police officers. The court further noted that the NPSC is not classified as a national security organ under Article 239 of the Constitution, meaning it cannot handle functions tied to operational policing, including recruitment and disciplinary processes. As a result, the judge issued a permanent order barring the Commission from conducting any police recruitment, training, or disciplinary activities. The decision effectively invalidated the recent police recruitment plans announced by the Commission. Now, a section of Isiolo Meru community has accused the Isiolo County government of poor governance, mismanagement, and failure to deliver on key development promises, deepening divisions within the region over the administration's performance. Speaking during the community meeting, the group criticized county leaders for what they described as stalled development, inadequate public services, and lack of accountability. They also took issue on the faction within the community that continues to praise the county leadership, claiming the group is misleading the governor by denying the challenges facing the residents.
Na kitu ambayo imefanya tuwe hapa leo hii ni ile maongeo tuliona waajiriwa wa county wakipongeza gavana Kayole kwa sababu ni waajiriwa wa county. Lakini bwana gavana, usikie mahali huko, hiyo watu ni waajiriwa wako na wanalinda kazi zao na mishahara yao. Hakuna kitu wanakuambia ya ukweli na watakupoteza. Na wewe nataka kukuambia utafahamu na utaelewa ni uongo wanakuambia ifikapo 2027 mwezi wa 10 kura itakapopigwa, ndio utakuja kujua hawa watu walikuwa wanakundanganya. Nataka kukuambia mheshimiwa gavana, kwa sababu watu wale wote wewe unawajua hata kwa majina, nihesabie uniambie mmoja yule ambaye ana interest kwa serikali yako.
We want them that when walikuwa sasa wana address watuonyeshe hizo wanasema it is 50% done, because this time we need an Isiolo, a new Isiolo, not Isiolo yenye sasa inaandikwa kwa papers, ina petition, but kwa ground there is nothing we can touch. Second thing, I want also to address this issue to the county executive. I think leadership, as a leader, you should rule from an equilibrium point so that you can be able to deliver service to every person who is within where you are leading. So when I look at these issues, governor anasema amefanyia kama ni jamii wa Meru. Those things sisi hatujaona. That's why we are complaining. We are not complaining on no basis. We have the basis that has given us the morality to stand and speak out. So governor, for you to satisfy us, we need you to come out and answer us. Where are those things that you have done for us? We need the accountability. After that, that's when we can only be satisfied.
Tunajua katika ethics and anti-corruption 2015 airuhusu wafanyikazi wa county kwenda kwa presi kutetea employer wao. Kaenda wakatuambia sisi ni maskini. Yes, sisi ni maskini juu atukuri kwa atuna ile inaitwa ongo, atukuri ongo. Sisi tunasimama na mifuko yetu, tunajifanyia kazi. Kila sura hapa inajulikana Isiolo. Gavana, utufanyie vizuri.
Now, the upcoming Mbeere North parliamentary by-election has transformed into a politically charged battleground, with opposition leaders urging residents to reject the government-backed candidate as a rebuke to President William Ruto's administration. The Chama cha Kazi, that is CCK, aspirant Duncan Mbui, has positioned the contest as a referendum on Kenya Kwanza government, accusing it of failing to honor development pledges made to the constituency since the 2022 general elections. Speaking during a rally where he received defectors from rival parties, Mbui criticized the government for neglecting key infrastructure projects, including road construction and the Kamomu Dam, and failing to deliver employment opportunities for the youth. He accused senior government officials of returning to the constituency to campaign instead of fulfilling their promises, calling the involvement hypocritical.
Kuwa mtu anafikiria watu wa mbele, tunaweza enda kwa serikali, huyo ni muongo wa kutoka mbali. 2022 alikuja akasimama hapa Ishiara akasema within 90 days barabara ya kutoka hapa kunaitwa Ishiara kwenda Kerie kwenda Gikuyare Chicago, within 90 days itakuwa imeanza rami. Imeanza rami leo? Kuna dalili ya kuanza? Sasa wanapotuambia tukae kwa serikali ndio ati sisi hiyo barabara iendelee, kwani 90 days ijaisha? Si wametuzoea? Namba 2, hao hii serikali ya Kasongo hii ilituahidi ya kwamba sisi tukichagua Kasongo, na tulimchagua na 87% katika Mbere North constituency 87%. Sasa ni serikali gani tunaambiwa tusupport ati tukae kwa serikali? Wakati sisi niwakumbusha, wakati wa Kibaki tulikuwa tunalipa kodi kidogo zaidi, lakini education ya secondary na ya primary ilikuwa free. Leo magarateo leo hii serikali ile mambo imetufanyia ni mambo huwezi jua. Imeharibu education kiwango ya kuwa ukienda pande inaitwa ya primary, yale mashule ilikuwa inapokea 100,000 200,000, leo hii wanapata 15,000. 15,000 itanunua itafanya maintenance ya shule gani? Ukikuja secondary ile capitation ilikuwa ipepeanwa, hakuna pesa. Tukienda wale wako secondary pande ya education kule kunaitwa nini universities, wale wako colleges, tulikuwa na mpango mzuri wa kitu inaitwa help. Sasa hii wameleta kitu isaidie mwananchi. Sasa hii ni kilio kila hiyo serikali iko na haja na sisi kweli? Na tunaambiwa tuchague serikali gani? Niwaulize tena nikienda kumalizia. Tunaambiwa tufuate serikali ambayo ilitupata tukiwa na njia mzuri sana ya kitu inaitwa health scheme. Health scheme yetu NHIF kuja wakasema ati wanaleta health scheme ya kila mtu. Leo hii hiyo tulikuwa tunaambiwa itakuwa ya bure. Leo hii mtu ukitaka kuhudumiwa na wewe una kazi yoyote unaambiwa kwanza uza ng'ombe upeleke pesa kwa.
Now, the Othaya constituency in Nyeri County has posted the lowest number of newly registered voters according to the latest figures released by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, that is the IEBC Nyeri office. As on Tuesday, only 75 new voters had been registered in Othaya, placing it last among the county's 6 constituencies in the ongoing voter registration exercise. Now, in contrast, Nyeri town leads the county with 6 or 7 newly registered voters, reflecting a significantly higher voter turnout and interest in the current registration drive. IBC officials have urged eligible residents, especially youth, and first-time voters to take advantage of the remaining registration period to enlist as voters ahead of the next general elections.
2 weeks ago, we had registered around 420, and you can see we had improved within 2 weeks by more than 1,000. Tetu 121, Kieni 182, Madira 248, Othaya 75, Mukurweini 280, Nyeri Town 607, a total of 1513. We have not yet made arrangement to go out to reach to the farthest part of our county. However, the stakeholders are coming in our offices to request us now and then to go and register. That is the challenge that we have. That's what we have seen, the request from the religious leaders, political leaders. I would request all the people who have not been registered as voters, especially the Gen Zs, to come and register in our offices. Let them not wait until we come where they are.
All right, now tension is rising in Bondo after angry residents stage protests against a proposed gold leaching plant, accusing investors and authorities of failing to involve the community in the decision-making process. The residents expressed fear that the project will pollute water bodies in the area, putting their health, livestock and environment at risk. They claimed no public participation meetings were conducted to inform them about the project's operations and potential environmental effects. Speaking to the media during the demonstration, residents argued that the plant poses a major environmental threat and demanded that the government halts its establishment until proper consultations are held and environmental safety is guaranteed.
I want to condemn this issue of lynching that is going on here, bearing in fact that it will have effect on water bodies. Here we have 2 water bodies, that is the rivers. We have Majengo and we also have Kokumu. So we want to reject it because the chemicals that will be produced as far as lynching is concerned, we are made to believe that they will affect our water bodies. About the death instances of animals, it has happened in several areas, like area in Kopolo. We understand that the 5 animals that succumbed due to this leaching process.
My farm is neighboring this plot. This was agricultural farm, and this farm, when being agricultural farm, and now is being transferred or converted to industrial, it was supposed to be gazetted, so that those people with issues like us now can complain. We were not given anything like that, and we don't have the other documentation there. Third, we are saying there was no public participation to inform us what is going to happen here. We have just seen construction going on. Fourth, we are saying this is chemical plant, and therefore, in the board, they've listed engineers, whatever. We expect a name of a chemical engineer which approves what is going to be here and even to oversee the chemical process. Fourth, we are talking about pollution. The chemical, mainly sodium cyanide, that is being used here, has 3 effects on pollution. It has got air pollution when it decomposes, and that's very dangerous. Then it has water pollution when it leaks under the ground. And we have 2 or 3 water bodies around it. We have 2 ponds. One is 5 meters away. Another one is about 200 meters away. And the river is about 100 meters away, the seasonal river. So this waste will split there because there's no drainage or anything that is constructed to indicate how those wastes will be disposed. Then we have land pollution. The soil that is being used for leaching, once it is used, nothing can grow about that one. Nothing. And there's no indication where it's going to be disposed, and we are not taught.
Now tensions gripped Emuhaya in Vihiga County after angry residents blocked the Kisumu-Busia Road at Boyangu to protest rising insecurity in the region. The demonstrators lit bonfires and barricaded the busy highway, accusing police officers of laxity in dealing with criminal gangs allegedly terrorizing the area. Police were forced to disperse the crowd to reopen the road using force to clear the protesters. Now, the residents claim that a notorious criminal group has killed 9 people and injured several others in the past 6 months. Now, they further allege that suspects arrested in connection with the attacks are often released without charge, fueling public frustration and mistrust in security apparatus. The locals are now appealing to Interior Cabinet Secretary, that is Kipchumba Murkomen, to urgently intervene and restore peace and security in Emuhaya.
Nataka audience kutoka kwa OCPD na OCS wa hii area waseme ni nini haswa wanafanya. Wanatoa vijana wakishikwa, wanatoa vijana tena wanarudi. Sasa ndio kwa sababu tunataka watusikilize, tuongee nao, watuambie ni nini haswa ambayo inafanya kuna ukosefu wa usalama huku Mbali na West Bunyore at large.
Watu wa Emuhaya West Bunyore wanapouawa, wakipeleka complaint kwa polisi, hakuna action yote imechukuliwa. Kufikia kwa mwenye inafaa tolewe jana, mwenye wanakataza hata hawezi tolewa, ni watu 9. Wenye wameumizwa ni zaidi ya watu 10 na hakuna mmoja hata culprit ameshikwa.
Tukishika wazifu wanawatoa. Kazi yao ni kusimama kwa pool, wanacheza pool na waacha tukiuawa.
Alright, it is exactly 34 minutes past the top of the hour. Taking a short breather here on the drift, but when we come back, we'll tell you what exactly the newspapers are saying on the other side after the break. Don't go too far. All right, welcome back to the program. My name is Martin Mashera, just in case you're joining us. Let's take a look on what's making headlines on the dailies today, and I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper and the Standard newspaper. Now let's kickstart with the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning, being the last day of October 2025. Now, top story on the Daily Nation says Tanzania on the edge. All right, and of course there is a picture there of how situation was in Tanzania. That was yesterday. Tanzanian riot police dispersing demonstrators right there in Dar es Salaam during violent protest that marred the election on Wednesday. And of course, I don't know if you've ever been in Tanzania. Of course, maybe you've seen their news. You know, their roads, billboards, actually, you know, campaign billboards of their president, that is Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. Of course, you know, there are billboards there written Kazi too, and of course, pictures of the president. All right, now let's take a look at that particular story. On before you do that, let's take a look on what's the Daily Nation has to say in regards to this particular story. And tear gas, gunshots, and reports of death as protesters returned to streets in Dar es Salaam and other towns. And of course, we remember that there was a curfew actually in Dar es Salaam, being the capital of that particular country. And international flights cancelled, businesses take a hit, with civil servants told to work from home. Also, provisional results show how President Samia Hassan taking an early lead in, of course, those particular elections. Let's take a look at that particular story on page 4 of the Daily Nation. And of course, police in Tanzania fired tear gas that was on yesterday to disperse protesters who returned to the streets a day after a general election marred by violent demonstrations. Now, protests broke out in commercial capital, that is Dar es Salaam, and other cities during the vote on Wednesday over the exclusion of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two biggest challengers from the race, as well as the demonstrators, as well as what demonstrators say is increasing government repression. Police ordered an overnight curfew in Dar es Salaam, a city of more than 7 million people, after government offices and other buildings were burnt. Internet access disrupted during the election appeared to be returning imminently on Thursday. Now, Mr. Tito Magoti, a Tanzanian activist, told Reuters he had received reports of at least 5 deaths in Wednesday's protest. All right, now diplomatic source who asked not to be named said that there were credible reports of at least 10 people killed in Dar es Salaam. Now, Reuters could not independently verify these reports, and spokespeople of the government and police did not respond to requests for comment. Now, the state-run Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation began airing the announcement of provisional election results, which showed Samia Suluhu winning commanding majorities in several constituencies. Now, dozens of protesters returned to the streets of at least 3 neighborhoods in Dar es Salaam yesterday, where police fired shots and tear gas, a witness said. Now, other witnesses in Arusha and Mwanza said police fired tear gas to disperse small protests. The British government, however, said international flights have been cancelled to and from Dar es Salaam, and that the airport in Arusha and other near Mount Kilimanjaro were closed. The unrest presents a test for President Suluhu, who won plaudits after taking office in 2021 for easing repression of opponents and censorship that had increased under her predecessor, that is John Pombe Magufuli. Right, and that's particular story goes on and on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. All right, now let's take a look on what's making headlines here in the country. And Uhuru Party picks Matiang'i for 2027. Now, the Jubilee Party has formally unveiled former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i as its deputy party leader and endorsed his 2027 presidential bid. The move marks the clearest sign yet to the party's succession plan after former President Uhuru Kenyatta Now that's a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Of course, yesterday the former CS, that is Fred Matiang'i, has been named Jubilee's deputy party leader. Now, President William Ruto yesterday actually reiterated his administration's commitment to accelerating development in all regions, dismissing opposition's leaders' claims that certain areas have been overlooked. Yesterday, he began a 4-day development tour of Western Kenya. President William Ruto insisted that no part of the country will be excluded from his agenda for equitable growth. Of course, he says that our plan is to develop the whole country. Right now, the head of state also accompanied former Lava UDA candidates as mini polls near. Of course, you remember that yesterday, President William Ruto had a tour to the western side. And of course, a day before yesterday, he was actually in Nakuru County. Of course, he is seemingly, starting to have tours and launching projects in several areas of this particular country. Now, Matiang'i, now Jubilee's 27 presidential candidate. The announcement was made yesterday following the National Executive Committee, that is the NEC, meeting chaired by Mount Kenya. In its opposition, Dr. Matiang'i, at the heart of Jubilee's political revival and within the broader efforts to unify Kenya's opposition forces after the death of ODM leader Raila Odinga. Now, a senior Jubilee official told this particular newspaper that Dr. Matiang'i's elevation effectively makes him the de facto head of the party, given that Mr. Kenyatta is no longer in active politics. The official said Dr. Matiang'i's endorsement gives him both legitimacy and political standing within the party and the broader united opposition movement. Right, that's a story, of course, on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Of course, on page 2 of the Daily Nation speaks about African 6 climate finance reforms. That's on page 2. And on page 3, when police turn on those they swore to protect. Now let's take a look at this particular story. Matters crime in uniform. And a black Subaru had been tailing a businessman's Toyota Harrier as he drove on Thika Superhighway on October 19th. Now, it was still close behind him when he parked on Mirema Drive, Nairobi, despite taking note of the Subaru, which had foreign number plates. The businessman was not alarmed that before the men jumped out of the car, all right, one brandishing a rifle. Now, the Daily Nation has withheld the businessman's name for safety and legal reasons. Now, with the AK-47 pointed at him, the men ordered the man to open the door of his car and hand them money and the documents on the passenger seat. Now, the men counted $16,000, that is approximately 2.06 million Kenya shillings and 500,000 Kenya shillings in local currency before speeding towards Lumumba Drive in Roysambu with the businessman in the boot of the Subaru. Now, they abandoned him near JCK Hospital, that is in Roysambu. Now, shaken, he dropped on a border, which dropped him off at Kasarani Police Station, where the incident was recorded. Now, the investigations into the robbery led to the arrest of 3 men, and 2 of them Directorate of Criminal Investigations officers, that is the DCI officers. The 2 officers are attached to the DCI Operations Support Unit, that is OSU, a squad created in 2022 to combat complex and violent crimes that threaten national security. Now, the 3rd individual arrested is a former police officer linked to the criminal activities over the years. Now, tip-offs led detectives to a house in Kitengela where they found car number plates, 7 mobile phones, and a tear gas canister, ID cards, and handcuffs. Another police officer was arrested during the raid in Kitengela. Later, 2 other OSU officers were held in connection in the Mirema robbery. Investigations revealed that the crime was executed using an official DCI vehicle. All right? Of course, that's a story that goes on and on page 3, exclusively on page 3 of the Daily Nation. And one may wonder how, police turning to they swore to protect. quite unfortunate story that, you know, sometimes you can, you know, lose trust in the security apparatus here in the country. Quite unfortunate story. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And the top story on the Standard newspaper, same as the Daily Nation, says darkness in Dar es Salaam, rather in Dar. Now Tanzania has exploded into its most violent unrest in decades as furious citizens pour into the streets to reject what they call a stolen election. Now, President Samia Suluhu's whereabouts remain unknown amid a nationwide lockdown, internet blackout, and mounting deaths. Now, with borders on edge and the army warning police against shooting protesters, the world watches as a nation once praised for its calm descends into chaos. That's the story on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. And of course, there is a picture there of the president of Tanzania, that is Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. Of course, pictures there of, you know, how chaotic things were in Dar es Salaam. That is for the better part of the day of election, of course, and the better part of yesterday. Now let's take a look at that particular story on page 4 on the Standard newspaper. We see what the Standard has to say in regards to that. And the Standard says that violence continued for a second day in several of Tanzania's major cities as the country remained under total lockdown and a communication blackout. Police shot and killed 2 people in Namanga Township yesterday afternoon. Chaos erupted at the border post when police chased protesters from Tanzania into the Kenyan side. Now, where demonstrators torched banners and posters of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Now, Tanzania police lobbed tear gas canisters and fired live bullets as Kenyan and Tanzanian youth pelted them with stones. Now, the 2 protesters joined Kahindi, a local Kenyan businessman, and Tanzanian and a national Kabuli Balai were fatally shot. The bodies were transferred to local mortuary, while 2 others, including a Kenyan police officer, sustained serious injuries. All right. Now there's pictures there of, you know, someone who seems to be a protester is being arrested by the Tanzanian security officers. And of course, on page 5 of the Standard newspaper, Tundu Lissu says, of course, you remember that Tundu Lissu was actually detained. He was an opposition leader. Of course, what people may term as a threat to, you know, to the elections that were recently held in Tanzania. And Tundu Lissu says, and quote, "I will not give up the struggle," as, you know, Tundu Lissu says as he gets democracy award. Now, Tanzanian opposition leader, that is Tundu Lissu, has been recognized as a champion of democracy amid increasing pressure on the President Samia Suluhu, whose government wants him jailed for treason. Lissu's award by the Democracy Union of Africa, that is DUA Forum, was received on behalf of by Chadema International Secretary, that is Munishi, who also read the detained leader's acceptance speech. Lissu vowed to fight on, saying he would not be deterred by Suluhu's administration high-handedness. Through details, the stretchy because communication with the outside world is impossible due to the censorship and around-the-clock surveillance by prison guards and CCTV cameras. Please allow me to thank you for the important award. Of course, that's a speech which was written by, of course, Tundu Lissu, and was read out on behalf of him by Munishi. Of course, that's a story on page 5 of the Standard newspapers. And of course, other stories making headlines in the Standard newspaper: buses, trucks halt travel to Tanzania after election chaos. That's a story on page 5 of the Standard newspaper. Also, missing activist rights groups call for sanctions against Uganda. Of course, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo are still, being detained of what is allegedly said to be an abduction. Right now, in the face of the growing frustration over the fate of missing Kenyan activist Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, a coalition of civil society groups and human rights defenders has petitioned the European Union to suspend funding or to the Ugandan government and impose sanctions. Now, the petition addressed by the EU delegation in both Kenya and Uganda and the European External Action Service in Brussels urges the bloc to take immediate action against Uganda for what it terms as continued violation of human rights and international laws. Of course, that's a story, of course, on page 3 of the Standard newspaper. And of course, on page 2, Jubilee declares Matiang'i's ticket bearer vows to join opposition. And of course, that's a story on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Of course, now Matiang'i, it is clear that he'll be vying for presidency come 2027 under the flagship of Jubilee Party. Right now, that's what's up on the dailies today. I was having the Standard newspaper and the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning, being the last day of October 2025. It is exactly 57 minutes past the top of the hour, and of course 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Taking a short breather here on the program, but when we come back, we're having a conversation of the Cybercrime Act, which was actually signed by the head of state during the death of the former Prime Minister, that is Raila Odinga. I don't know if you remember that the president actually assented to a bill that was presented to him that was a Cybercrime Act, but later on the High Court dismissed or rather halted that act for further consultations. Of course, we are going to have a conversation right here on The Drift with creators, actors, and content creators. We take a look about whether they share their thoughts on that particular act of the Cybercrime Act of 2024. Don't go too far.